Alright guys, this is a little bit more on Joseph from Refugee, starting at page 74. They were somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, 8 days away from home. Excuse me. Finally, Shabbos arrived. It was the day Joseph would leave his childhood behind and become a man, and he could hardly contain his excitement. The ship's bulletin board announced that first-class social hall would be converted to a synagogue, a Jewish house of prayer, which meant Joseph might have his bar mitzvah after all. He was careful not to show his eagerness in front of his father, however. What would have been once a happy occasion in the Ledoux family was now fraught with anxiety, thanks to his father's paranoia. A synagogue excuse me, guys. On board the ship, Papa said. He shook his head as he paced their little room in the oversized note clothes. The captain himself has arranged it, Mama said. Ridiculous. Did no one see the Nazi flag overhead as we came on board? Will you not go to your own sons of bar mitzvah, then? Joseph's mother and Ruthie were already dressed in their nice Shabbos dresses. Joseph wore his best shirt and tie. Bar mitzvah? There won't be enough men there to form a minyan, Father said. By tradition, 10 or more Jewish men, a minivan, was needed for a public service. No. One who has lived in Germany for the past 6 years would be foolish to go to a Jewish service aboard a Nazi ship. Papa ran his hand over his shaved head. No, it's a trap, meant to lure us out. That's when they'll snatch us. It's a trap! It's a trap! Mama sighed. All right, then, we'll go without you. They left him pacing the room, muttering to herself. Joseph felt like someone had yanked his heart from his chest. In all the times he dreamt of this day, his father had always been there to recite the blessing with him. But maybe this is what becoming a man is, Joseph thought. Maybe become a man means not relying on your father anymore. Joseph's mother and Ruthie stopped short, just outside their first-class social hall. There weren't the required 10 men for the service. There were 100 men, probably more, wearing yarmulkes, not saying that right, on their heads, and black-white talisman, a prayer shawl, around their shoulders. The card tables had been pushed to the sides of the room, and stewards were adding more chairs to accommodate the crowd. The table at the front held a Torah scroll, or a Jewish Bible. Joseph stood and stared. He felt like it had been ages since he'd been inside of a synagogue. It had been crystal not. Those are good to go. Before the Nuremberg laws that made Jews second-class citizens, before the boycotts and burning of the books, before Jews were scared to gather together in public places, Joseph's parents had always taken them to synagogues with them, with their shabbos on. And when their parents left their children with their nannies, it came flooding back to him. And now, swaying and humming along with the prayers, craning his neck to see the Torah, when it was taken out of the ark, and hoping for a chance to touch it, and kiss his fingers that scrolled around the procession, Joseph felt a tingle in his skin. The Nazis had taken all of this from him, and now the passengers on the ship were taking it back. Gustav Schroeder, the ship's diminutive captain, was there to greet them at the door. In the gallery above the room, a number of the off-duty crew had gathered to watch. Captain? Asked a rabbi, one of the men who was leading the service. I wonder if we might take down the portrait of the Fuhrer, given the circumstances. It seems inappropriate for such a sacred moment to be celebrated in the presence of Hitler. So the picture that the pastor or the rabbi wanted to take down was a picture of Hitler. Remember, at this time, he was the head man in charge. His picture was up in everybody's house, in every building, at every school, in grocery stores. You're in a building, he's there. If you're probably outside, he's on billboards. Joseph had seen paintings of the Nazi leader all over the ship, and the first-class social hall was no exception. A large portrait of Hitler hung in the middle of the room, watching over all of them. Joseph's veins ran with ice. He hated the man, hated him because of everything he had done to the Jews, but mostly of what Hitler had done to his father. "Of course," Captain Schroeder said. He quickly called over two of the stewards, and soon they had taken the portrait down and were taking it from the room. In the gallery above, Joseph saw one of the crew slam a fist down on the railing and storm off. Joseph's mother gave him a kiss on the cheek, and she and Ruthie went to sit on the section reserved for the women. Joseph took a seat in the section with the men. The rabbi stood in front of the crowd and read from his... Then it was time for Joseph to recite the blessings he'd been practicing for weeks. There were butterflies in his stomach as he got up in front of a large audience, and his voice broke as he stumbled through the Hebrew words. But he did it. He found his mother in the crowd, and her eyes were wet with tears. "Today," Joseph said, "I am a man." There were many hands to shake and many congratulations after the ceremony, but it was all a blur to Joseph. He felt like he was walking in a dream. For as long as he could remember, he'd wanted this, and no longer to be a child, but to be an adult. Joseph's mother and sister left to go back to visit his father in the cabin. Joseph walked the promenade deck by himself, a new man. Renta and Evelyn jumped out from behind the lifeboats and grabbed Joseph by the hand. Without their parents on board, they skipped synagogue to play. So these two little girls skipped church. "Joseph, come stand guard with us," Retna cried. Before he could protest, the girls dragged him to a women's restroom. He was afraid they were going to pull him inside, but instead they deposited him by the door. "Yell if you see someone coming," Retna said breathlessly. "We're going to latch the stalls from the inside and crawl under the doors so no one can use the toilets." "No, don't!" Joseph tried to tell them, but they were already gone. He stood there awkwardly, not sure if he should stay or go. Soon the sisters ran back outside, hanging on to each other with laughter. A young woman staggered past them, clutching her stomach, and looked green. Renta and Evelyn got quiet, and Joseph stood, hearing the woman desperately rattle the stall doors looking for a toilet. The woman lurched out of the bathroom, looking even more green and desperate, and wobbled away. Renta and Evelyn burst into laughter. Joseph raised himself up. "This isn't funny. Go in there and unlock the doors this minute." "Just because you had your bar mitzvah doesn't make you an adult," Renta told him, and Evelyn stuck her tongue at him. "Come on, Evie, let's do the bathrooms on A deck." The girls tore away, and Joseph huffed. They were right. A bar mitzvah alone didn't make him an adult, but being responsible did. Sorry, I lost my place. He walked along the promenade looking for a steward he could tell about the bathroom stalls. He saw two stewards who had stopped to look over the side of the sea and came up behind them. "Must be doing 16 knots, easy," one said to the stewards. "Captain's got the engines maxed out." "Has to," the other said. "Them other two ships is smaller and faster. They get to Cuba first and unload their passengers. Who knows? Cuba might decide she's full up with Jews when we get there and turn us away." Joseph looked out to sea. There wasn't another ship on the horizon as far as he could see. What other ships were they talking about? More ships full of refugees? And why did it matter? Which one got there first? Hadn't everyone on board applied for and paid for visas? Cuba couldn't turn them away. Could they? One of the stewards shook his head. There's something they're not telling us. The shipping company. Something they're not telling Schroeder. The captain's in a tight spot he is. Wouldn't want him for all the sugar in Cuba. Wouldn't want to be him for all the sugar in Cuba. Joseph backed away. He already forgot about the stalls in the women's bathroom. If he and his family didn't make it to Cuba, if they weren't allowed in, where would they go? Pretty tight quarters there.